Tanya Strong Books here with Tracy Hunter Abramson. Continued. So, how many different publishers have you had?
Only had one up until literally my first one comes, it's October 1st is the first one with Shadow Mountain. So I had Covenant Communications for everything. And then now Shadow Mountain. And so I'll actually be one of the authors who will bridge between the two companies because I'm still finishing up a couple of series. There's a good chance that I have a couple of series that might continue with them. So, but it's all under the Deseret Book umbrella. So in the arching, overarching scheme of things, I'm both. It's all under there. So, and the funny thing is, when I first submitted my first manuscript, my top choice was Covenant because I felt like they did fiction very well.
Mhm.
And then my second choice was Deseret Book. At the time, Shadow Mountain didn't exist. And so it's funny that in essence, Deseret Book a couple years later bought Covenant. So I got all of my top choices without ever meaning to. So
That's
it's kind
awesome.
of fun.
And you
Yeah.
don't, so do you have an agent? Because you don't need one with either one of those, correct?
Well, Shadow Mountain, they have a couple of times during the year where you have an open call where or open submissions, but typically I think more people have agents than don't with Shadow Mountain. Covenant, most people don't. So yeah, I've just always self-represented, and having a degree in business is very helpful.
Mhm.
The other thing I do is for I don't know if a lot of authors know about this, but there's something called Authors Guild, which is an organization that just authors supporting authors. But one of the things that they do is they will give free legal advice if you're a member.
Oh,
So when you get that first contract, you can be like, all right, I'm going to send this to my entertainment attorney. And this is what these people do, as they're very well versed within the publishing industry. So they kind of know, they're very familiar with that particular contract language. And so they do that. And that's what I did when I shifted over to Shadow Mountain. I said, okay, I had negotiated my previous contracts for a long time on my own. And this was a very long contract. There were a few things I knew I needed to, ask about. And
mhm.
so I said, all right, these are my concerns. And I sent it to the attorney, and he says, all right, here's all our concerns. And several of them matched mine. And so, but it gave me a jumping off point. So that's another thing. And people can just do that. They can just go hire an entertainment attorney. But when you're first starting out, the dues for Authors Guild, you pretty much have to be a member, or at least agree to be a member for at least 2 years to use their legal services. But a lot of times that is cheaper than a entertainment attorney. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know about that. That's
yeah,
really interesting. Yeah,
yep.
because I've always just thought like, oh yeah, agent, get a lawyer. So that's really good advice. Gonna have to look
So,
at.
and usually an agent will have an attorney or they will have some legal expertise that they can help with. So that's if you're looking to sign with an agent, that's always a good question. Do you have an entertainment attorney that will be included in what you're doing for me, or is that something you're going to expect me to do on my own?
Interesting.
So, but typically, your agent is the one who's negotiating a contract if you have one, and they'd be dealing with those contract points.
So
So,
for you, I've read three of your books, your new books that came out this year, and you have so many more coming out. So how many more books do you have coming out this year or just in the next that are ready to go too? I
oh
know
my gosh,
like
I
one
have a
and
board. Let's see. So I've hometown. So Royal Duty just came out last week or two. So then Hometown Vendetta. This is the first. Has a glare, but it's the first hardback I have. Then I will have When Fashion Turns Deadly comes out in November. Um, and then next year, Reconnect is the one that everyone is waiting for and ready to strangle me over. That one's March 4th. The countdown started March 4th. And then April Fool's Day, which you meant that one will be both Sean Bessie and I will both have books come out that same day. But
oh,
mine's Hometown, or I'm sorry, Novel Threat. So, and actually, I've got that one here. I just got the advanced reader copies. This one will be another hardback, but I
ooh,
just think this cover is so gorgeous. So,
it looks
the
so good.
so that'll be my second Shadow Mountain series that I'm starting. So,
That's
and
awesome.
then let's see, I'm looking. So, Reconnect, Novel Threat. I have another Royal next year. We're going to have a compilation of some of my novellas that have come out previously, along with the new ones. So my Doug and Jill novellas. So they were like in some compilations before, and then I have a new one for that. Um, will come out next year, and then my second Luke Steele novel will come out next year. So then I already turned in the next Royal and the final Falcon Point
Oh,
um, suspense. So yeah, I just have to write two more books this year. Then I'll be kind of close to on time.
for the
So
coming years, for the next
so
set.
I'm trying to finish up my 2026 line right now.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so the ideal would be I would have liked to have had them all done close to now, and we just had so many things happen that were unexpected that it pushed me back a little bit. So I'm hoping to get at least one of them into the CIA by the, or mid-November or mid-October or so. And then the other one written by the end of the year.
So how many books do you write a year?
I'm trying to get down to four. And I know that sounds terrible because I was trying to get up to one when I started. So keep that in mind. It takes 20 years. You can be talking about, getting down to instead of up to. But because right now I'm looking at, I think I have five next year. And then so I think 2025 and 2026, I'm five a year. And then after that, I should be going down to four. So
Wow, that's impressive.
that's crazy. We call it insane is the better word.
And impressive.
I mean, some of them are truly miracles. Like Hometown Vendetta, I was asked to write that when I found out, got the initial approval from Shadow Mountain on that. They gave me basically 2 months to write the book, and which for somebody who's been writing as long as I have and typically has a good sense of things, it's doable. It's fast, but it's doable. And so I told my editor, I said, "You want me to write a book in 28 days?" She was like, "No, no, no, you have 2 months." And I said, "You guys forgot that I have to clear it through the CIA and they need 30 days. So that means I have 28 days." They're like, "Oh." So I said, "Okay, so this is where we all pray for the miracle." And it happened. But I was just like, and it did help because Shadow Mountain, they'd asked for me to give them like a summary of what was going to happen. And
Mhm.
usually I'm fingers on keyboard. I don't know what's going to happen. And do you know it is easier to write a book if you know what's going to happen? Who knew? Like Sarah Eden's been telling me this for years and I didn't believe her. And apparently it can work. So
That's funny. Yeah,
yeah,
Hometown Vendetta. I love it. Like
thank you.
I could not put it down. I think I read it. Normally, like a paperback takes me a little bit more time because like I'm setting it down a lot more than like an audiobook that I can listen to as I'm
Right.
like cleaning or whatever. Yeah, I was like staying up and reading it. I was staying up really late reading it and I loved it because I love romance. And you threw in some fake dating, which is one of my favorite things. I love, love, love fake dating. There
That
was
was
that. I
fun.
was like, there was action, there was like fake dating, romance. Oh my goodness. It was like, it was so good. It was so
Well,
good.
thank you.
I loved it.
Well, one of the things I loved is like at Shadow Mountain, I kind of got an extra level of editing because this is the very first suspense novel for them. They've never done suspense before. And so the president of the company, Chris Schobinger, he was like, "Well, let me take a look at it before we send it to the board for the final approval." And so they'd already edited it, my editor had already done it, and then he did a read through and gave me some phenomenal suggestions. And so it was like getting this extra edit, and having a female editor and then a male, basically second editor. It was like, oh my gosh, the two of them picked up so many things that I think it made it a much stronger book by having their help.
That's
So,
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I know just from like listening to your podcast that you guys had and then like some interviews I've seen with you that you usually are a pantser. You just
yes.
write and I remember one interview you were like, "Yeah, sometimes I don't even know who the bad guy is. Like I'm just going." So in this one, did you know well, you said that you had to kind of turn something in or something. So did you know
Yeah.
who the bad guy was before you started?
So I handed in the summary and I had no idea who it was. Like I didn't know the bad guy. I was just like, it's somebody who fits this demographic,
Yeah.
but I yeah, I had no idea. And so that was the one struggle on the book, was trying to figure out who the bad guy was. But that's part of the process, is that the readers, when you're reading a suspense or a mystery, you're trying to figure it out as a reader. Well, I'm doing the same thing as the author. And I think that's one of the reasons why my books don't get too predictable, is
Mhm.
because I don't know the answer either. And so as I'm writing, like, the clues, I'm hoping, and I'll put clues in that it could be these different people, but like, who is it? I just don't know until I get toward the end. Usually about 200 pages in, I have a good chance of knowing who the bad guy is.
Yeah.
So,
And I feel like sometimes when I'm reading and you can tell they're like a pantser sometimes because it's almost like that came out of nowhere, but it didn't make any sense. And this one I felt like made so much sense. Like as once it was revealed, I'm like, oh, okay, that totally makes
yeah,
sense. And it still kept with all the clues and totally made sense. And so I have noticed that you're really good at sticking with the clues and making it make sense at the end. Where some they're just like, and it's this person, and you're like, I don't.
right. Well, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
and some of that is like when I go back and read on my second, like on my basically my second draft, now that I know who it is, I'll
Mhm.
make sure that none of the clues are misleading. And so sometimes I'll pull clues out that were no longer relevant, or I'll change some of the clues to make it a little bit, if it was too specific, make it more vague, or make the vague ones a little more specific, that you want the reader to get to the end and say, ah, of course. Of course that's who it was.
Mhm.
But you don't want them to be on page 17 and say, well, might as well just flip to the last chapter and see if I'm right, because they already know who it is. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
So it can be an interesting balance.
Yeah. And you did it beautifully in Hometown
Thank
Vendetta.
you.
I really liked it. I loved the reveal and being like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. But of course it was nowhere even in my sights. So it was
Yeah.
good. I loved that. Okay. Things that you always want a reader to know about you.
So I know people don't believe me after Disconnect, but the truth is I do write happily ever after. It's just not finished yet. Just trust me. Um, but I think the biggest thing for mine, I found, and I had this conversation when I first met with Chris Schobinger over at Shadow Mountain. I said, I am very consistent in my brand. And that is that everything is, it's friendly to pretty much all ages. You're not going to have to worry about something too gory, or that language coming out of the woodwork that you don't want grandma to hear, or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that's probably the number one thing, is that what I've learned over these years is I can write suspense that's going to keep people turning pages without needing to use any of those tools, that some other authors would choose to use. So I don't know. I guess that's the number one thing for mine. And I've got a great editor, so she makes me look way better than I am. So,
Those are important.
oh my
Well,
gosh.
and I've read, three of your newest books this year, and all three of them have been very different, but all still have your voice. I felt like each one it wasn't like you were doing the same thing and just kind of mixing up. And I've read authors like that after they get so many books, you're like, this is the same story over and over. You're just changing it a little bit. These ones were all like, they all still had your voice, but each one was so different. And I liked each of them for different reasons. So I think that's talent too, to be able to
Well,
have, how
thank
many
you.
books do you have? 50 something books?
50 something. I think we'll be at 52 at the end of the year, somewhere
That's
around there,
talent.
52, 53. Yeah. So it's like I have to, when I'm asked that question, I honestly pull up my website and I just count.
I
So
think I did that and I was like losing count. I'm like, wait, where am I at again?
that's what I do too. Yeah, it's bad. So,
It's a good
so yeah,
problem to have.
I think I'm pushing towards 60 that are like between what's published and what's in the pipeline. I should be at 60 within the next, hopefully by the end of the year,
What
or
an
close to it.
accomplishment. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And what is one thing you wish you knew when you first started writing?
Oh my gosh, probably, I don't know if it's so much I wish I knew, but it's something I've come to so appreciate, is how amazing the people are in this community. Like, everyone, everyone is so supportive. Everyone has started out and remembers what it felt like to be watching for your email, or for me, it was snail mail of somebody telling you yes or no on a manuscript, and or listening, hoping the phone will ring with that good news and everything. So everyone's been there, and everyone knows what it. You never get past the imposter syndrome. Like it just own it. It's like we're all going to go through those periods of feeling like we're not good enough, we're not, somebody is better. And so I think probably the best, honestly, advice I can give is don't compare. We're all so different. We can choose the same story idea and we will have completely different books because our experiences are different. So, so I think I was pretty good about not comparing, but there was a period of time early on that I started watching like reviews and stuff. And I think it's Jennifer Nielsen said, good reviews are like crack, bad reviews are like poison. It's like, the bad reviews can just completely demoralize you, but the good reviews can make you need more, and you're just constantly looking for that validation. And the truth is, the validation comes from who we are and what we need to be happy with our project. And honestly, the first book I ever wrote, when I was rewriting it, I remember getting to the point and saying, you know what? If they don't take this, it's fine. I'm really excited about what I wrote. I love this book. And if nobody wants it, that's fine because I am pleased with what I did. And then a month later, I got that call. So it wasn't even the mail. I was watching the mailbox and they called me um, to say, yes, we want to sign a contract. And so I think that realizing that was actually a really good growing exercise for me, or situation for me, that I had to get to where I knew that it was the best I could make it by myself before I was turn it in. And so advice wise, that's the other thing. Don't expect somebody else to make it better. You have to make it your best first, and then an editor can help you make it shine. But I remember thinking, oh well, an editor can fix that. It's like they're busy. There's so many talented authors out there. We have to have our best work going forward.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so good. I needed to hear all of that. Okay, well, can you please tell everyone where they can find you and all the places we get to follow you on your travels and your book releases?
So I'm on tracyabramson.com as my website, and I'm at Tracy Abramson, and it's Tracy with an I, on Instagram and Twitter, X, whatever it is. And then I think it's Tracy H. Abramson on Facebook. So, and then I also have my group, Tracy's Friends. So if you like to read, you don't even have to read me. It's just a bunch of people who love to write and read and hang out with people who are like-minded. So those are
Yeah.
my main spaces.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I've loved talking with you. You're an amazing writer person. You've always been super encouraging to me, even though like I feel like I'm like a nobody. I'm a nobody, but you've always
Nobody's a nobody.
you've always been super encouraging and you've always like messaged me back and I adore you and I'm so excited to see all these amazing books that you have coming out and the different publishers and the different series and everything. I'm just so excited for you.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for chatting with me. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you.